All right, guys, we got another great conversation for you today. I'm excited to introduce you to a woman near and dear to my heart, my sister, Elizabeth Harden. She's our newest teammate here at Sunset Solutions. She's plugged in as our internship program coordinator, a role that really aligns with her skills. Looking forward to letting you hear some of her story and how God's brought her to this point.
Yeah, she's actually a very young lady, just graduated recently in 2023, going through a lot of transition. She was actually recently married. She's the pastor's wife, and she's got a real heart for missions. So this is going to be a really great conversation. My name is Mike Tapia.
And I'm Cody Hall.
And this is the Go and Send podcast.
All right, guys, welcome. Really excited to get to introduce the newest staff member of Sunset Solutions team. This is a wonderful lady that I've actually known a lot of years.
So true, yeah.
This is Elizabeth Harden. She is my sister, actually, and she's just come on board Sunset's team on a part-time basis, serving with us in mobilization. Mm-hmm. And what is your role with us?
I'm the internship program coordinator.
Program coordinator. Very good. So you're focused on what?
Yeah, so I am going to be doing a lot of work with potential interns, especially college students, obviously, and just trying to market to them, trying to contact them as much as possible, just let them know what opportunities we have. Mm-hmm. And then as they onboard, I'll be here to help with that. I'll also be doing some things with like media and trying to get us more on Instagram and more on YouTube. So yeah, it's Excellent. Exciting.
So you started the beginning of September. Mm-hmm. What have you liked so far, maybe most about your role? What have you been enjoying about it?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the creativity that I can have. I feel like Charlie, who's my boss, he's been really open to my ideas, which has been really good. I like being part of a team as well. So we have a lot of meetings on Zoom because I live in quite a few hours away. And I've been enjoying getting to know Charlie as well and his wisdom with missions because he's been in missions for so long. Yeah, it's just great to be working with Sunset. Like, you've been here for around 10 years and I've been hearing about it forever. And so it's good to be a part of it finally.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's really cool to have you here, Elizabeth, and I know
Thank you.
Diving into new things and a lot of excitement right now, and kind of cool to have Cody's sister here. I think that's pretty neat. Cody's a good friend, and see, I see a lot of similarities. I'm like, I can see it. I can see it. That's Cody's sister. That's pretty cool. And I know you guys kind of had that background in ministry growing up. Like, that was something that was really involved in your family, and something that I've heard a little bit from Cody's side. Kind of cool to hear a little bit from your side too. Like, how would you describe that, like, that growing up, and how was like ministry incorporated in your life?
Yeah. We grew up in West Virginia, kind of in the middle of nowhere, just in the hills and the hollers, and our dad is a carpenter, and so he would use his skills to work on people's homes. He would do like Bible studies with them as well, especially a lot of leading mission teams in the warmer months. And so they would just go in and find a couple or a widow who just needed some help on their homes. In the hollers, there's a lot of trailers and just things that would need a lot of help and repair even. And we also did like backyard Bible clubs with a lot of kids in the hollers. We would do like a lot of ministry with food, canned food, and things like that. At Christmas, we would do things like just going out with actually 2 teams for days. And just a guy would dress up as Father Christmas or whatever, cool. And like we'd pass out toys.
It wasn't
like
your
that.
dad that dressed up like Father Christmas?
Thankfully, no, that'd be terrifying. So it it was very based in just trying to make people's lives better, obviously through the gospel,
Yeah.
but also just meeting needs with their homes. So, yeah, it was really cool to grow up there. I'm really glad we did. We served there for, I think, 22 years?
Yeah, 22 years.
Yeah.
A lot of stories in that time.
Wow.
A lot of
Yes.
stories in that time. What would
Yeah.
you say is maybe a story that you remember about ministry and growing up there in ministry?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is God's provision. So, like, this is really not like one story. It's more like just our life and how we lived it. Mom and Dad got a job on this campground, where we got to stay in the house there for free, and
Nice.
our bills got paid, which was just a huge help, right? Because we were a missionary family,
Right.
and so we had raised a lot of funds with churches like in North Carolina, and so just having that free place to stay and plant things like fruit trees and just a huge blessing. And there were a lot of times when we needed funds for, like, oh man, the van broke down, or just things happening, or even college, and God just provided through people like the exact amount that we needed sometimes. And so that was huge. I think that really helped us as kids to grow up knowing, all right, God is going to provide what we truly need. And he knows way better than we do what we need. So that was really just my whole childhood,
Yes.
watching Mom and Dad just know, like, all right, well, the Lord's going to provide somehow.
Right.
And he would. He just came through.
Yeah, it was a life of faith. It was practical faith.
Wow.
Yes.
That's good. That's a good point.
As you take those steps and you see the Lord providing, like, yeah, I could see
Yeah.
that, like, just in, the ministry experience I've had and raising ministry support and things like that. You really see the Lord providing, and I can imagine seeing that at such a young age, that being really
Yeah.
influential too in your life and your worldview and just even your view of missions. But obviously, being in ministry isn't always easy, and there's lots of challenges and difficult things come up. Like, how did you process those things, like difficult things, like, as growing up in that ministry environment?
Yeah. I think watching my parents, again, so much happens through our parents. Like, God uses parents, believing parents, to push their children towards Him. And, hard things would happen, and we would just pray about things. I think that was huge. The Lord was really kind to give me, or give us, a mom who loved Him. I remember watching or going into her room because I was hungry for breakfast, and watching her pray by her bed. That was huge. And they would talk through things with us, and again, just a very practical faith. God's going to do this. And so just a lot of trust in the Lord, and that He was going to take care of things, again, was huge. I think, too, the local church having mentors around was massive. The Lord provided mentors, I think, for all of us,
Yes.
like through high
Yes,
school,
it did.
especially when things are hard. And that was a huge blessing, too.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. The periods of growth in my life, growth in the Lord, I think were periods of mentoring where I had older, wiser men investing in me, meeting with me regularly. I remember one of the guys that got me my first jobs out of college, we would meet and study the scripture together once a week. And so we went through a couple of books of the Bible, during the time we were able to meet over a couple of years. Mentors are key.
Well,
Yeah.
Key.
this might be a little bit of a tangent, but it's just like, I think that discipleship, mentorship kind of is so important. And just like curious too, like, in your side, was it like people like saw you guys and just decided we're going to invest in you? Like, how did those mentors like enter into your life? Was it through just through church? Was it through friends or?
I think, at least on my side, it was me going and asking, like, hey,
Did you? Wow.
can you be my mentor? It's interesting because I think a lot of children of like pastors or missionaries, a lot of people around them kind of view like, oh, their parents are really spiritual, and so they're totally equipped already to just deal with things, when that's not true. Like children of pastors and missionaries need discipleship in their local churches.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I just went and asked, and this particular mentor was really kind and said, like, absolutely, let's start meeting. And so like we would go through things. I would come to her with problems sometimes, and that was key. So the idea of discipling the children of your church leaders, so key.
Yeah. Wow. Good point. That's really interesting, and I think it's convicting too in my own life too. Like, what opportunities am I missing to not pour into people? And also convicting in the sense of like, am I being intentional to ask people to pour into my life? The same side. So I appreciate you sharing that. Wow. So I actually don't have a full background of where you went to school and your education background. Like,
Yeah.
you mind sharing a little bit of that with me?
Yeah. So we were homeschooled all through our entire 12 years. And that was, I wouldn't say that we were like too sheltered. I don't think, because we got to see a lot of hard things in ministry still, a lot of ways that people were living that were just hard. But I was able to just be around my parents a lot more, and we were able to travel a lot more, which I think was huge in just me being comfortable with traveling, comfortable with the idea of missions and things like that. And so that was big. And then my last year of high school, I started to do this thing called dual enrollment with Boyce College, which I would highly recommend.
Cool.
And that was really helpful to just learn what Boyce was really about. I already knew that I wanted to go there. And by the way, that's Boyce, not Boys College. I get that a lot.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, I got to see like what they were about and really enjoyed their classes a lot. So I ended up going there for my degree in global studies, which is technically their missions degree. But I also learned a lot about different cultures and how to interact with them, how to try to, really the idea of just globalization as well, which can be pretty vague, but I was able to learn a lot about people groups and a lot of studying cultures and other religions as well. And so that was really helpful. I graduated in 2023 with that bachelor degree. So I loved my time there. It was really formative, especially in friendships and trying to learn how to disciple and counsel and all those things, and be a part of my church as a college student on my own, really, because they push the local church and ministry so hard there, and it was really helpful.
So you were obviously involved in a lot of different ministry opportunities, even at school, right? I mean, what were some of those?
Yeah, usually it was through my local church. I was part of a student org, like at the school in my freshman year. Of course, my freshman year got cut off because of COVID, and so that was a real shame. But we would do things like prayer walks. We would do, just ministries like that. I was also involved for a time until it got cut off by COVID in ESL ministry, so trying to teach the immigrants there in town English, because they were really, really willing to learn. And that's also a good way to share the gospel and try to get involved in their lives is through that ministry. And then, of course, there was church, just trying to be a part of it, try to get involved in families and childcare and things like that. It was really helpful. Yeah.
And you talked about discipleship and mentoring too. You were an ARA, right? And then an RA. What was that like? Because I know that's the nitty gritty. That's like where the rubber meets the road, and having these conversations with girls that are struggling through things.
Yeah, that was probably the most influential job that I've ever had. I mean, I'm only 22, but still, that was just, gosh, a lot going on in the girls' lives on my hall. So I was an RA for 2 years and a ARA for 1 year. And so RA ministry at Boyce is different from a lot of other ministries. A lot of times it's just things like admin or curfew or you have to clean your room. But at Boyce, it's more like, okay, let's pursue biblical community. And so that was my job. I was trying to pursue friendships. I was trying to, like, if people had a problem and they came to me, try to counsel them with scripture, especially. Trying to keep tabs on people and their lives and how their involvement was in their local church, right? The life of the Christian. And so I had the opportunity to get some experience in just counseling some really hard things, pursuing friendships with people who were very different from me and from how I think through things, able to disciple those girls even. I think at the height of our hall, I had almost 30 girls under me.
Wow.
Which is a lot of people. So trying to create hall community with events and things like that. So it was a really good experience. I'm really grateful for it. I think it kind of developed like my idea of a career even. Just, I can use scripture to counsel. Every Christian can use scripture to counsel. And so as long as I have the Bible, I can help people who are struggling. And so that was really huge.
That's so cool. And, it's always neat to see how the Lord, has gifted different people too, right? There's different giftings in the church, and I think using that for the building up of the body, right? Building up of the church, and I could tell like your heart is for counseling and some of that side of things, and you got to be involved in your school. What's like a story that you can think of, like some kind of impact that you felt like just a time with maybe one of these ladies there in your school as an RA?
Yeah. So one particular friendship that comes to mind, it was this girl who came in as a freshman, my original first year as an RA, and I could tell right away like there was a thing that was a bit different about her, just being very intense about her faith and trying to be educated at Boyce and things like that. And so she was actually my first coffee meeting as an RA, and she was just really, really sweet. And throughout our friendship, I was able to, she came to me with a really hard thing that had happened at home over a break. And especially after that, our friendship just kind of formed, and we would talk a lot about, classes and life and the gospel and the hard things that both of us were going through. And eventually, after I graduated, she became the RA of that hall. And so cool. It was so cool to see all right, all of this intentional time with her has snowballed into her taking my place. And I was so happy that she could take my place because she's so equipped and just loves the Lord a lot. And so that was really, I think, kind of the crowning thing of my ministry as an RA. Really special.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think looking at that global studies degree, you knew what you wanted to do. I mean, we grew up in a missions home. A home was familiar with missions. You clearly, from a young age, wanted to go into missions, to go into ministry. I remember even when you were in this dual enrollment period in high school, you reached out to Dr. Albert Mohler as he was hosting this Ask Anything event. So Albert Mohler is the president of Southern Seminary, which is kind of the overseeing seminary of Boyce College. I don't know if you'd say that they're connected.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So you asked a really good question about ministry. And do you remember what that question was?
I do, yeah, because I was I was all up in arms about it. There are a lot more women in the missions field overseas than men. A lot of them are going alone, like without spouses, because the Lord is just directing them to do that, and that's great. And I was wondering why. And so I asked him, and his response was, I believe, that a lot of men, if they don't have a spouse or a family, a lot of them just don't want to have to depend on trying to raise funds. They don't want to do the humility part of it, right? Like, Lord, please do this. I'm asking you to use people that I know to get me through ministry. And apparently a lot of women are just more inclined to want to do that. And so that was interesting to me. I'm really grateful that all of those women can, but it was also kind of a moment of, all right, man, we need to kind of step up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like part of the purpose of this conversation that we're having today, and really the whole space that we're trying to create here, is trying to motivate and mobilize the next generation of Christ followers into global missions, and realizing that God's calling men and women to do this.
Absolutely.
We want to see a proportional build out of that. I know Mike and I, we've both raised support.
Yeah.
So that's an experience that we've all shared. I mean, we've experienced that, we've seen that, and yeah, it does require humility. But understanding the biblical basis for it and the way God's designed His kingdom to advance through the support and partnership and prayer of His church globally and His people globally, is a beautiful design.
Truly, yeah.
It is. It's an interesting question too. I remember thinking about this question at Cedarville University, where I went to. Like, there was a mission conference, and a very similar point the speaker brought up, that there's just overwhelmingly larger percentage of women going into missions than men.
Yeah.
It just made me think, like, why? So it's really interesting that you kind of went into to ask that question. And there's so many details to that too. Like, but I think too, in some sides, like, why? I mean, I think men want to be in, like, I don't know if there probably is a shortage of men as pastors as well, going into pastoral ministry, but missions overseas seems even more. I also, like, I don't know, this is totally kind of a weird tangent, and
Please.
maybe not, maybe I'm off base, but I think a lot of, people, young men today too, are thinking maybe in the idea of like entrepreneurship too. There's a drive in that, I think, and probably
Definitely.
Gen Z. I don't know how you view that. And I think there's like, I mean, I don't know, missions is kind of entrepreneurial too. I don't know if there's like a way
definitely.
to repaint that. Like, this is like a way to be serving the Lord and going forward with something that He's calling you to do, and not just let me be dependent on everything and begging for money. That's just such a wrong mindset, right?
Yeah. Business as missions is huge. It really is, and it's an easy way to get into these closed countries, right? Like, if you have a degree that can be helpful to another country who maybe needs electricians or needs welders or who knows what, right? Like, maybe you go and you open a grocery store, just a small grocery store in a small town or something. That country is much more willing to let you in. Or if you have a master's degree, right? Like in education or something like that. They're like, yes, please come in. And then that's a great way to just get in and make relationships with people for the kingdom, or go and be a part of a local church just as a member, right? Like, it's huge. Yeah.
So I believe you've had some experiences overseas and have had the opportunity to go on some of these trips. Where have you been able to go?
Yeah, so I went on most of them as a teenager, and so that's kind of what helped the missions idea to get even more going, at least the idea of trying to help with overseas missions. So I've been to the Dominican Republic, and that was I think that was the one that I went on when I was like 12 or 13, and that really helped jumpstart things. And then I also went to Panama, I think I was probably almost done with high school around that time. And then the most recent one that wasn't really a trip about like trying to spread the gospel or missions, but trying to go and help missionaries. I got to go to a country in Asia and just go and take care of the teenagers of a ton of missions families where they were there for a retreat. And so that was really cool to go and spend time with those youth families and try to spread the gospel to people like youth of missionaries who it's easier to believe like, yeah, my parents are missionaries. I'm a Christian, like absolutely, like no question. Go and pointedly share the gospel and say like, hey, just because your parents have given up so much to go and spread the gospel does not mean that you're a Christian. Like that's your own personal relationship with the Lord that's important there. And so, yeah, and my trip in Panama especially was helpful. The people that we went to go and do ministry with were actually, I believe, from Paraguay. And that kind of challenged my idea of like, no, all the missionaries come from America or from Europe. No, that's a complete lie, right? The entire world, every Christian around the world is commanded to go and spread the gospel. And so these missionaries from Paraguay came to Panama to just be involved, to go and lead mission teams and evangelism and different ministries there. And so that was really, really cool to see.
Now, that's something I've been reading a little bit more about lately. They call it a polycentric. They call it polycentric view on missions, where it's multiple countries sending to multiple countries. It's not a handful of countries sending to the rest of the world. I think that reflects healthy local churches ultimately in those areas. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well,
that's good. I mean, it's not all open doors either, though. Kind of along the journey, there's some closed doors. God often uses closed doors to help us understand the next step. Like, where do we need to move? What do we need to do? God, what would you have me do here? Have you experienced some closed doors related to missions?
Oh boy, have I! Yeah.
oh boy.
So, COVID-19 came, and we got sent home from college mid-March, as a lot of other students did. Right? I know that y'all probably started working at home instead of here at the office, and that dashed a plan to go to India actually for a 2-week trip. And I was actually interested in India to go for like a whole term at school. So to get college credit for going with a agency and just doing missions and doing life with people in India for, I think it was about 3 months. And so that was my original plan. And so I was going to go on this 2-week trip, kind of just get my bearings about me a little bit. It was a trip with my school and a professor and some other students. Well, that got canceled because of COVID.
Oh boy.
And goodness, yeah. And then I went home and I started raising funds for another trip to India, obviously the long one. And then that got canceled. I want to say like about 3 weeks or a month before I was supposed to go. And so then I was like, well, I don't really want to stay home. I guess I'll just go back to college. And actually, that was a massive thing that the Lord used. My director of my building had actually been wanting me to come on as a leader of students. So the ARA position. And because my longer term trip got canceled, I was able to go and be the ARA that year at my school. And then that kind of snowballed into me becoming the RA of that hall that next year. So if those trips hadn't have gotten canceled, there's really no guarantee that I would have been able to be a leader on my hall and learn so much through real life experience about counseling and able to be involved in my church in those ways. And there were some things that ended up happening as I was an RA at home that just allowed me to be there for our family. And so that didn't coincide with the long-term trip, but it was still just the hand of the Lord clearly, where I could keep learning at school and in my church to just grow as a Christian. Yeah.
It's neat that you got to see kind of in retrospect the way the Lord used that, and you could see ultimately, that was where you needed to not be on that trip to India. But I'm sure that in the moment that was pretty disappointing. Like, what was going through your mind when that door closed in the moment? How did you process that? How did you handle that situation?
Yeah, so it was wild because I had raised all my funds already. Like, I had put in the work. Actually, for both trips, I was completely ready to go, and the Lord just closed that door around the world, right? It was wild. It wasn't just me. And so that was interesting to see. I was definitely disappointed. I think I remember kind of like quickly turning towards the ARA spot. I was like, okay, Lord, like, you have this. And it was just a really clear, massive way to see the Lord has different plans. Like, who knew that COVID was going to hit and the world was going to close down, right? He has better plans in every case than I do. And so even if those plans are painful, and they often are sometimes, those plans are better. And the Lord is going to provide everything I need in those seasons. So, yeah, it was wild. I know that y'all experienced it too.
It seems like right now you have a lot of seasons of change going on. 2023 graduated, right?
Yeah.
You're just started, in a job here at Sunset, and I believe you've recently been married as well.
I did, like 3.5 months ago.
3.5 months ago. So that's a lot of change going on. So how are you processing all that change right now in life, and kind of maybe tell us a little bit about your husband and your, even how that came about.
So it's easy to, because he's the best. It's easy to talk about him. So he, at the time of us dating, he was a dairy farmer and a pastor. So I loved to tell people that. He's now, because it's so cool. He's been in the ministry now for 2.5 years at our church. And before that, he was at Boyce. And so that's actually how we met. We went to the same church and obviously the same school. And we didn't really know each other well. I talked to him a few times. There's a few things that I bring up, like, oh, do you remember that conversation that happened? It was like one of 3 that we had in the whole time that we could have known each other at school. And then he just messaged me and he asked, well, first he wished me a happy birthday. And then
there you go.
He asked for coffee. And so we went out and it's been great ever since. Yeah, I think that right now it is obviously a big time of transition. And so just trying to hold on to the things that I know I can hold on to, right? Like my husband, and God's word hasn't changed. I am in a new church, but the mission of that church is the same as my old church, right? And in my old town. And so in all of that, trying to hold on to specific pieces of scripture, or just, all right, God is still really good, and he's using all of these pieces of of transition to bring me closer to my husband and closer to him, or the Lord. So that has been really helpful to try to keep in mind. Transition is never easy, that is for sure, but it is one of those kind of rare times where a lot of the things that we used to depend on is kind of taken away, right? And then it's like, all right, like who or what do I have now? And in every time of transition, it doesn't depend on what it is. I can always depend on the Lord, right? And his word is still the same. It still has those same truths and those same promises. And so that's been really good to hold on to.
Amen. That's a good word. Wow, that's good. Thinking about the time you spent as an RA counseling, you mentioned that theme kind of ran through those years, and being able to help these girls and really work through struggles, work through challenges.
Yeah.
You're about to launch into another counseling related ministry.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Yeah. So we currently don't have kids, of course, and I have a part-time job. So I have a lot of time to devote to trying to become a biblical counselor with ACBC. It's a really, really good organization, and they offer a 2-year about track to become part of their organization. And so that involves a lot of reading. It involves a lot of hearing lectures. It involves a lot of like watching other counselors as they counsel. It involves a lot of counseling other people, right? Like there's a required number of hours that you have to do, and as well as writing out a lot of answers to theological problems, to your view on just God and how God relates to the world and things like that. So it's very intense. I'm a little nervous to start, honestly, because that 2-year deadline is a little intimidating, but I do believe that this is going to be a great asset in ministry, being able to learn how to counsel and also get critical feedback on like, how am I doing? How am I counseling? How can I do this better? Or like, what homework can I give these counselees that is going to be more helpful? So I'm excited to learn. Yeah.
What ultimately kind of like, I could tell you had a heart for counseling and kind of it's been going on in your mind ever since college, but what kind of like drove you to make this step to do like, I need to get certified in the counseling? Was there like a particular like thing that made you realize like, I really need to do that?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a little hodgepodge of things. One is that I do think I am gifted in counseling and in the things that I need to have to counsel, right? Like compassion and empathy and things like that. So that was one thing I knew that the Lord had given me part of the equipment to do it. Also, I have the opportunity, right? Like my husband is a pastor, and so therefore there are a lot more open doors into to people's lives to be able to counsel in our church and things like that. So, and also our mom started the process. I think that she had started her exams, the long papers that you have to write. And then she actually got diagnosed with cancer and passed away. And so she couldn't complete the process. And so that was just another reason why I was like, I would like to do this, Mom wanted to counsel and use her gifts, and I would like to too. And also you are in the process right now, and that's just another connection of like, oh, well, Cody's doing it, and he has all these kids and all this commitment, and so I can too.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about Mom and you and your similarities, I think you'd be an incredible counselor. I think that's going to prove out. Yeah.
Wow.
That's good. Thinking about your age, you're 22,
Yep.
part of this Generation Z, right? Mm-hmm. Generation Z. Part of what we want to do here is mobilize Gen Z
absolutely.
into missions. We want to help folks see that the kingdom needs to be advanced. The Great Commission still stands. Making disciples, Jesus said, it's a non-negotiable. I mean, he said, go therefore and make disciples.
Yeah.
So every generation has to answer that call in their own way. And every generation faces barriers, different barriers that some are the same, generation to generation. Other barriers are different. Other inclinations and things that folks have experienced in their upbringings introduce other barriers to obeying that call. One of the things that we've seen, I know in conversations, has been, I want to say, risk aversion. Risk aversion, something that, having gone through like the great financial crisis, most recently having gone through COVID, and just really seeing folks and the way society has responded to that. Across the board, we're seeing a reduction in globalization right now. A lot of the factors that produce globalization are now gone, and you see a lot of the reshoring or the onshoring. You hear those terms in the news. Risk aversion is a big barrier. It has always been a barrier for missions, but one of the things that we've seen is that for Gen Z, it's especially present. Does travel make you nervous? I mean, travel, going away from your family, that's something that is a significant risk. Is that something you've seen that makes you nervous personally? How do you think about travel, domestically and internationally?
Yeah, so I think that one part of our childhood that is helpful now is that we traveled a lot. Like we would go on these 3-week long trips, just being away from home for all that time. And so that was helpful to see, okay, I enjoy traveling, I can adapt easily. And so that risk aversion is really not in my mind. Like I'm not too afraid of traveling. I don't like turbulence, but that comes to an end eventually. But I think you're right. Gen Zers really don't like being uncomfortable, and obviously who does, right? But I think that other generations were able to say well, the reward outweighs the discomfort I feel right now, or even the fear. I've heard about Gen Zers even delaying getting a license or a permit to drive because they just don't want to drive. Like they don't want that responsibility, or they're afraid of well, what if something terrible happens?
Right.
And it's always possible that you could crash or something, but most people don't. And yeah, I think you're right. Traveling away from home, away from a culture that possibly into danger, Gen Zers are just not about that. Yeah.
So how do you, as a Gen Zer, how do you process that risk aversion? Like what are things, maybe ways that you've realized that maybe better perspectives, or ways that you've been able to overcome some of those fears, or maybe you generally don't have those same struggles. I don't know, but how do you view risk aversion?
Yeah, I think kind of the overarching idea that helps is, all right, this also is under the providence of God. Ultimately, everything, right? Every decision, every red light, every plane taking off, every conversation you have, it's all under the providence of God. He's not allowing anything to go unseen. And that's really comforting. Psalm 23:1 talks about the Lord being our shepherd. And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
And then it says, I don't want anything. Yeah. It's a weird way to say it, but actually the author is saying, I have everything that I need. And so this idea of, if I don't have a thing or a person or anything really, then apparently I don't need it. Even if I think I do, because ultimately God knows exactly what we need. And so all of that is under God's providence. And even like more intense things like, well, if I go on this dangerous trip or to this dangerous country, I could die. And that's true. It absolutely is. But ultimately, it's better to be with the Lord, right? Like that's how other missionaries have viewed going to these dangerous countries. I think of people like the Judsons and just trying to view every risk that we take in the fact that God has it all. I think that's been helpful for me. Yeah.
That's good. Excellent. One of the other big points, I think, and this is a personal thing for me, but the purpose, the purpose of my life and why am I here? And for me, I find a lot of solace in that Great Commission as a kind of a banner that's stretched over my life, and it applies to me. It applies to the decisions I make, the things I prioritize, the way I raise my family, the way I interact with my church and serve there. How do you think about fulfillment and the purpose of your life and connecting that to ministry and relationships?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that trying to understand ultimately my purpose is what God has been big. I don't always know his plans, but I do know that ultimately I am a image bearer of God that, well, whose existence is to glorify him, to make much of him, right? Like that is our ultimate purpose as a Christian. And as people in general, like unbelievers, their life and existence and the fact that their body works is bringing glory to God, even unintentionally in their minds. And so I find a lot of purpose and a lot of joy, I think, in being with people and building relationships with them. And that is a big part of the commission, right? Like building relationships with people and discipling them. It's always a good idea to have a relationship with a person in order to spread the gospel. And so I think that I've found a lot of that purpose in understanding, all right, God has given me this, God has continued to give me life, and I should use it for his glory. Now, that can also be a type of ministry that is not like, oh, I work at Sunset, and, like it's this big idea. It can also be, hey, I have kids at home, and I'm going to invite my neighbor and her kids over to try to be hospitable. And there's lots of creative ways to do ministry, right? Like doing ministry in your local church, trying to, teach a class for kids. That is also part of God's purpose in spreading the gospel as well.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of unique, giftings that the Lord has given, us and as individuals in the church. And I know Cody and I, we're engineers, and pretty cool that we get this avenue and opportunity to use our unique giftings in engineering and assist world missions, assist overcoming technical barriers to the gospel. I mean, that's something that honestly I didn't really even realize was an opportunity until the Lord began opening up some of those doors while I was a senior in college. But how do you view it? The Lord's given you unique giftings, and he's given you specific skills that, I don't have, Cody doesn't have. How do you feel like the Lord is opening up avenues for you to use your unique giftings and skills in ministry? Yeah.
So this is interesting. I've been a pastor's wife for 3.5 months now. And I think pastors' wives often have a unique opportunity because we can do ministry like going and visiting a widow in a nursing home or what have you. A person calls and their daughter just told them that they're going to get a divorce or just things like that, just ways that I can come alongside Jared and especially pursue relationships with the women of the church in a way that, yes, he is their pastor, but he's also a man. And so I can just come alongside him in that. And so that's been really helpful, trying to build relationships with people in the church. Again, like counseling, I think that I have a gifting for that. And so I'm going to pursue more education in that. Yeah. I think that those are big ways, trying to invite people, at least at church right now, into our home and cook and things like that. I think that those are kind of the immediate ways right now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's neat.
And thinking about your role here at Sunset, internship program coordinator, obviously the interns that we get the joy of serving alongside, vast majority are college age or have just graduated.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a group of people that you've invested heavily in, and I think your giftings align with that as well. I think coordinating that, because a big part of our internship program here is investing in them through mentoring.
Yeah.
Through Bible studies, obviously the daily conversations, and working alongside on actual tangible, real projects. This isn't paper pushing type work. This is significant hands-on stuff. That's something I'm so excited to have you join into.
Too.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
So, you're in Gen Z and you recently graduated from school. So you had a lot of interactions with, people in your peer group, probably a lot of interactions about ministry and thoughts, and got to have conversations with, friends and others about that. What do you kind of get as the general perspective of ministry, global missions, like among your friends and your peers, or those that you've had conversations with?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in a interesting group, because I'm coming from my church, which was very, very heavy with college students at Boyce, or like with people who were in the school for ministry, specifically like being pastors or business as missions. But you're right, a lot of them are Gen Zers. And I think that Gen Z is interesting because they do want a purpose. A lot of them do kind of have this idea of we could change more of the world because of like media, right? Like media and globalization through it has just exploded. We can have friendships and relationships with people across the world, or there's international students, right? The town that I came from was huge in terms of just the nations are coming there. And
this was Louisville,
immigrants, right? Yes, yeah. Tons and tons of nations, tons of languages. I think there are like over 100 languages that are main there. Well, not main, but big. And so that was huge. The idea of, at least in Louisville, the nations are coming here, and therefore if we just get out into our communities or into these apartment complexes, we will meet people who have other relations back in their home country. That was huge. And a lot of missions organizations in the town really took that and ran with it, which is incredible. So I think that those things are big, as a lot of Gen Zers are in urban areas, just trying to get out and get to know people who came to the town recently from other countries. Also just being involved in your local church and going on trips. A lot of Gen Zers have more flexibility probably, or time, because they aren't like as high up in jobs yet, or they aren't married yet, or they don't have kids yet. And so using that time, which will probably be very short, right? Like they probably will get married soon. They probably will get a promotion soon. Go on trips, go and get involved, go and have coffee coffee meetings with unbelieving coworkers. That's huge. Just trying to use your time wisely while you're young is a huge opportunity.
Interesting. Yeah, and I know that vice versa. You have a lot of friends that are interested in missions and ministry. Do you feel like you kind of understand or maybe you're picking up a general maybe fear or thought process for those who are maybe not considering ministry or are kind of not interested in that pathway?
Yeah, I think there are quite a few who, there's more money if you stay in America and get a job that's more stable, maybe. There's a lot who have degrees in things like engineering or maybe a medical degree, things like that, where if you just stay in America, then you can kind of achieve that American dream or be able to buy a house quicker or who knows what. And so, yeah, I think that there are quite a few things with that where they are afraid of going into ministry. Also, there's a lot of opportunity to kind of be, I don't want to say disliked, but just have to do some hard pushback, right? Like in a church, if you're the pastor, there are times when you have to push back on ideas that might not work well or more conflict. Gen Zers are pretty afraid of conflict sometimes, as we all are. Just a lot of them are trying to be like everyone else. And so if you pick a career path or you come up with a decision or idea that is not like everyone else is going to know it and think you're a little odd, or that you're kind of wasting your life, when in reality, anything that is done for the Lord is never, it's not wasteful, right? Like it's the ultimate purpose of our lives is to serve the Lord. And so just kind of trying to change from that worldly mindset or that worldly worldview, if you will, into I can use my job as an engineer or as a nurse or whatever. Or I can go and get a ministry degree. Like that's okay to do, even if you won't make a lot of money at it. Those things are all useful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thinking about, you can use your gifts and skills in ministry and even here at Sunset to make an impact. I think everybody wants their life to have purpose. They want it to have meaning. They want it to make a contribution, and a significant one. How do you see your where you've plugged in here at Sunset and your gifts that God's given you? How do you see those making a contribution now and in the future?
Yeah, I love that question. So right now we are doing a lot in terms of trying to get contacts of college students to let them know who we are, what we do, what opportunities there are for using their degrees that are very technical or whatever in a ministry space. Because as you guys know, we need engineers and we need people who are into media or communications or like broadcast, radio. We need those people in ministry because you have to do a lot of practical or technical things in this age to get the gospel out sometimes.
That's right.
Why not use things like radio or media or like marketing, whatever, for the gospel when so many things and companies and organizations are global now, right? Like we have a lot of access to different things. Now is the heyday when it's really easy to share the gospel with a whole people group quickly and easily through radio or whatever. And so that is huge. I love the idea of being able to pour into college students in this really interesting and quick time of life where you can just get involved really easily in things because you aren't tied down. And what better way to use that time than at an internship with Sunset?
That's right.
For like 3 months. It's really quick, and you will learn so much. And so I love trying to get that opportunity out to college students. I think too that college students are in this time of life where they really could do almost anything. Like it's this time when they have a lot of opportunities where they could go down different paths. If you can use those things usefully and wisely, then you can set your life up to be more easily accessible to missions. And now's the time.
I love that. I think that's a great note to end on, actually. Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
Absolutely.
Conversation's been great.
This was great.
Yeah, it's been fun.